just, if you ever think about repair, you need to have lots of fridge.
Thank you, Jason, for playing that. I don't know if anybody remembers, but at Third Avenue Playworks, which then I think was called Third Avenue Playhouse, there was a production of The Velvet Gentleman, which was absolutely incredible. And of course, that was Eric Satie. Good morning. My name is Hank Wolst, and I'm pleased to serve as your service leader today. Welcome, all who seek renewal in a weary world. Welcome, all who come with love and energy to share. Welcome to those who worry for the future. Welcome, each one who is grateful for today. Know that in this place you are not alone. In community, we share our strength with one another, and we keep the flame burning bright. Know that in this place, responsibility is shared. Here, tradition holds us. Ancestors shine a light for us from the past. Here, the young live their bright faces and beckon us onward. Take my hand and we can go on together. A gentle reminder to please turn off any sound-making devices that you might have with you. The guitar is okay, Cindy. Okay. If you have any difficulty in hearing, please raise your hand and we'll see if we can adjust the audio a bit for you. First time here? Or perhaps it's been a while. In either case, it's our tradition here to invite visitors, first time or in a long time, to stand and introduce themselves if they're willing. Gives us a brief chance to get to know you. Also, we invite you to join us at our post-service coffee clutch, and then also join us for the talkback, which will follow about 15 minutes after the conclusion of the service, when our guest speaker will host an opportunity for you to interact with them in questions or comments or what have you. So if we have any visitors, again, first time or in a long time, I would invite you to all stand collectively. Any of you who are in that class of visitors? Anybody? Yes, please.
This is my third time, and I'm leaving in 2 years.
Uh-huh.
It's nice to come back.
That counts. And you are?
My name is Ann Kinzer.
Hi, Ann.
I'm from New Berlin, Wisconsin.
Super. Thank you. Welcome.
But I come up here whenever. I was up here for the film festival.
Okay. How was that, by the way?
It
Good?
was great.
Yeah?
I mean, you think you're going to be in, sitting inside, solid watching these films, it's going to be a long.
Yeah?
And it just kind of flies because each one is so different.
Super.
And you
Super.
can feel the passion.
Nice.
Super. Well, we're glad you're with us. Anyone else? This is the time we allot for announcements. And I'd like to invite anybody who has an announcement to raise your hand, and we'll acknowledge you, and Terry with the microphone will find you. So do we have any announcements? We see one back there, Terry.
Lindley's. I'll just remind you to read the back of your program. This is the first of several Sundays where we're going to do some reliving of our either childhood or older adulthood and play some board games after the talk back. The request is bring your lunch, but I brought a bag of popcorn for those who don't have lunch. So please join us after the talk back.
Next time you make that announcement, I would encourage you to say interesting games rather than board games. People may not want to come. Anyone else? I have an announcement. Buttons, my artistic wife, had a one-person show on Friday at the Door County Community Foundation, and it was wonderful. Now, she's chosen a different medium, and for this show, it's all usually done in oils, but now this time around she did it in gouache, which is the first time she's done a lot of work in gouache. In fact, she was kind of nervous about it, but I told her it would all come out in the gouache. But and indeed it has. I think it's absolutely wonderful. It's called Friends and Flowers, and you'll recognize some familiar faces amongst the friends. Now the chalice lighting. Farewell, farewell, but this I tell to thee, thou wedding guest. He prayeth well who loveth well, both man and bird and beast. Several weeks ago, Jim Black, chairperson of the program committee, sent out an email to the service leaders suggesting that each might choose to address one of the 7 principles if they wished. I so wish. The 7th principle espouses respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. The chalice lighting words today, you may have recognized, they come from Samuel Taylor Coleridge, a 19th century brilliant, troubled poet, theologian, literary critic, and philosopher, and a Unitarian. Although he did ultimately go back to the Church of England. Instead of following the prevalent philosophy of the day of the 18th century, which drew a line between man and nature, Coleridge developed a passionate view of the idea that there was just one. He believed that nature was the eternal language of God, the eternal language that God utters, and therefore connecting in one man, nature, and the spiritual, the interdependent web of all existence, if you will. Please stand, if willing and able, and join now as Cindy Steele leads us in All God's Critters Got a Place in the Choir. Following this hymn, a reminder to remain standing for the doxology and the unison affirmation, reverse order. And the chorus for the song in which Cindy's going to lead us is contained in the order of service. And so I'll turn it over to Cindy.
Yes, everybody join me in the chorus as we begin, and between the verses, except between the last 2 verses, we won't sing the chorus, but I'll nod. All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands and pause your hands if you got now. Let's do that one more time. Now remember, we're singing about critters and we're talking about nature. So if you think, Everybody loves the critters we're talking about in this song. They're the greatest critters on earth. Okay, so let's sing it with some excitement, all right? All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low and some sing higher. Some sing loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands. All is anything we got now. Listen to the bass, it's the one on the bottom where the bullfrog croaks and the hippopotamus moans and groans with a big to-do, and the old cow just goes moo. All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands for applause for anything we got now. The dogs and the cats, they take up the middle where the honeybee hums and the cricket fiddles. The donkey brays and the pony neighs and the old coyote howls. All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, and some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they got now. Listen to the top where the little bird sings and the melody and the high notes are ringing. The hoot owl hollers over everything and the jaybird disagrees. All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or applause for anything they got now. Singing in the nighttime, singing in the day, the little duck quacks and he's on his way. The possum ain't got much to say, and the porcupine talks to himself. It's a simple song of living sung everywhere by the ox and the fox and the grizzly bear, the grumpy alligator and the hawk above, the sly raccoon and the turtle dove. All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, some sing out loud on the telephone wire, and some just clap their hands and applause or anything we got now.
Thank you. Please remain standing. We begin with the unison affirmation. We gather together to seek knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast reaches of mind and spirit, to celebrate within a caring community those truths, ancient and modern, which give meaning and direction to our lives. Please be seated. Joy lifts the heart and spirit. Concern weighs them down. Sharing within a community of friends raises a joy to ever greater heights, or provides balm and lessens the weighty burden of concern. If you have a joy or a concern that you'd like to share, we hope you'll share it. Please note that the service is live streamed to the World Wide Web, and we ask you to be sensitive to names and information that those individuals that you might want to talk about may not necessarily want shared with the world. Please raise your hand and the microphone will find you.
Hi, Judy Rudd. I just wanted to share that our grandson, who turns 13 tomorrow, or today, Sunday, had a ski accident last weekend, and he went over a big jump about 10 feet high and landed on his back and had to be airlifted to Children's Hospital in Minneapolis. But the good news is he has feeling in his toes and his legs, and he's in a brace, and he has to remain still, which is hard for a 13-year-old, but he's doing really well. So I think the fact that he can feel everything is a very good sign.
Please keep the thoughts of a very dear friend of mine who's faced a very serious diagnosis and is having surgery in just a few weeks to deal with it. So if you'd keep her in mind, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
On Friday, I attended a memorial service for one of the most talented people that I think many of us had ever met, Carol Gresco, textile designer, and keep her in mind too. That's a big loss, I think. On the other side, my daughter came up, sorry, with the 9-year-old granddaughter, Ivy, to celebrate my 85th birthday and Valentine's last weekend.
Did you have something? I thought you had your hand up. I guess just keep Alex Navalny in mind. The reading today comes from Wendell Berry, one of my favorites. He's a contemporary American poet, novelist, essayist, farmer, and Kentuckian. We have lived our lives by the assumption that what was good for us would be good for the world. We have been wrong. We must change our lives so that it will be possible to live with the contrary assumption, that what is good for the world will be good for us. And that requires that we make the effort to know the world and learn what is good for it. We rely on your generosity of spirit and service and shekel. This offertory addresses the latter. As the offering plate passes before you, please give generously. You can also make contributions via the website at uufdc.org. Donate now. And if this is your first time visiting with us, we regard your presence as your gift to us and hope that you do as well. Thank you. Now take a moment to find your own place of peace and solitude, a place of your own, far from the tempest and the turmoil of the world around us. The reading comes from Peter Wohlleben, a German forester, student of the trees, writer, and the author of The Hidden Life of Trees and the Secret Wisdom of Nature. I was about 5 years old and on vacation visiting my grandparents in Würzburg, when my grandfather gave me an old clock. First thing I did was take the clock apart. because I just couldn't wait to see how it worked. Even though I was convinced I knew how to put it back together in working order, I couldn't do it. And after I had rebuilt it, there were still several cogs left over, and a grandfather who was not in the best of moods. But nature is much more complex than a clock, isn't it? In nature, not only does one cog connect with another, everything is also connected by a network so intricate that we will probably never be able to grasp it in its entirety. And that's a good thing, because it means that plants and animals will always amaze us. It's important for us to realize that even small interventions can have huge consequences. And frankly, we would do better to keep our hands off of everything in nature that we do not absolutely have to touch. Wilderness broadens our horizons. It offers an unpretentious, less egocentric worldview. Chaos may be afflicting the Middle East, but to a family of fledgling mergansers, what's really important is learning to fish. To a timber wolf, our tragedies and tribulations are insignificant. Chickadees don't care one bit about our arbitrary calendar dates or dire predictions of Armageddon. In the wilderness, the world doesn't revolve around us. We are just a few of the many creatures experiencing nature, not modifying it. Those words were written by our guest speaker, Mr. Dale Goodner, some dozen or so years ago in an essay called Empty Nests and Loaded Canoes. Back then, he lived in Peoria, where he worked as an interpretive naturalist for over 3 decades, and Dale and Mary subsequently moved up here to Algoma, where he retired in 2009, and we're delighted to have him with us today. So, Mr. Dale Goodner.
Thank you, Hank. Appreciate it. I think your complexity comment is very appropriate. It's been said that ecology is not rocket science. It's far more complicated. Cindy, thank you. Good job on Bill Staines' song.
Thank you.
You might be wondering, the porcupine talks to himself?
Well, shall I explain that?
I was going to explain it.
Oh, go right
See,
ahead.
you may not know this, but Bill used to perform at our house. For 9 consecutive years, he did house concerts in Algoma for us. Prior to that, when I was at the Nature Center in Peoria, we were on his fall tour back then. And lately, we've been on his spring tour, so we got to see Bill quite a bit. And he used to say that he and his wife were camping out west someplace. In the middle of the night, they heard, and pretty soon again, quiet. And he went outside with a flashlight, kind of shaking, and looked outside. It was a porcupine. They make this weird little noise. If you want to have fun and hear it, you can look it up online. Teddy bear is the name of a porcupine that was hand raised. And you should Google it. Just interesting. So I better get going here. Nice to see you folks again. This is great. Michael Collins had a truly unique experience on July 20th, 1969. On that day, he was 250,000 miles from home and utterly alone. The sole crewman aboard Apollo Command Module Columbia, he was in orbit around the moon while his fellow astronauts, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin, announced welcome words to a waiting world. The Eagle has landed. While Armstrong and Aldrin made the first tracks on the moon, Collins produced the most dramatic and memorable impressions. With his camera, his stunning images of our small, fragile, blue living Earth suspended in the black void rising over the moon's gray desolation revealed our home planet in a whole new light. You can Google that too, by the way. Just look up moon view of Earth. It's NASA. You can see it's beautiful. Imagine the Earth the size of a desk globe. The skies are not as vast as many of us assume. Our atmosphere would be comparable to the globe's varnish. There's an unexpected fragility about the Earth when it is seen from a lunar vantage point. So I like to look at nature, and you're referring to this, looking at the world differently. Well, they started the ball rolling on that one, boy. This new perspective of our planet was followed within months. It was followed by the first Earth Day. Also at that time, under the Nixon administration, there arose some of the most important environmental policies in American history, including the signing of the National Environmental Policy Act, the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency, the signing of the Clean Air Act, the creation of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the signing of the Endangered Species Act, and Marine Mammal Protection Act, among others. Collins' photograph of the eagle is particularly poignant. With Armstrong and Aldrin aboard, it is returning from Tranquility Base, the ineffable beauty of the rising Earth beckoning in the background. What can't be seen are the plethora of problems posed by our ever-expanding human population. These range from global warming to habitat loss to steady unraveling of the tapestry of life. For example, the worldwide decline we're now experiencing in insects. In the 1970s, Antony van Leeuwenhoek, oh, by the way, I was going to mention, the bad news is we're the cause of all these problems. The good news is that we're the cause of all these problems. That means that inherently, we are also the solution. All we lack is the attitude. We can do it. Remember the hole in the ozone layer? By 2050 now, it's supposed to be completely healed through international cooperation. That's an atmospheric level effort. Anyway, Antony van Leeuwenhoek was the first person to actually see bacteria. He produced high-quality lenses that allowed him to make an astonishing discovery. He found a world of tiny living critters all over the place. These had heretofore been invisible and hence didn't exist. Once described as a cloth merchant from Belgium, he's been now called the father of microbiology. Bacteria are now thought to date back about 3.45 billion with a B years in fossils called stromatolites. It had only taken the entire lifespan of our species, just about 300,000 years, to glimpse this huge reservoir of life on our planet. J.A. Baker, in his book, The Peregrine, he makes a profound observation. The hardest thing of all to see is what is really there. Think about that. Prior to this discovery by van Leeuwenhoek, disease had been a mystery. What could possibly explain disease? A capricious deity? Or some sort of karma brought on by the victim? Boy, she or he must have done something bad. Okay, skipping forward, Mr. Smith was my, he had creative ways of opening new worlds for us. He was my 6th grade teacher at Norwood Elementary School in Green Bay. He invited guest speakers to our classroom. He showed science movies produced by Bell Labs featuring Eddie Albert and Dr. Frank Baxter. I remember Baxter had described blood using just 2 words. Anybody know what they are?
Seawater.
Seawater. Thank you. That's exactly right. That is, it makes perfect sense. It tells you something about evolution. What I remember most clearly was Mr. Smith's use of a projector with magnifying lenses to give us a better view of the world. He brought in some ordinary pond water, placed it under a lens, shined light through it, projected it up on the screen. Otherwise invisible microscopic critters, such as parameciums, looked huge moving across that screen. Huge. Through their microscopic world, their cilia rippling like hundreds of tiny hair-like oars. Another time, he placed a live frog on the deck of the projector. By securing the frog and shining light through the webbing between his toes, he projected vascular tissue up on the screen. We watched blood cells moving from tiny arterioles, then channeling into even tinier capillaries. It's one thing to talk about circulatory system, but we actually witnessed it working. Here I repeat myself, ecology isn't rocket science, it's far more complex. Well, you know, the basis of education is repetition, right? The more we learn about nature, the more we can come to appreciate the depth of it. Mr. Smith expanded our world so effectively, I can still clearly remember it 65 years later. I spent a year as a part-time naturalist at the Green Bay Wildlife Sanctuary, way back when, 75? It led me to a full-time job at Forest Park Nature Center in Peoria, and I cannot imagine a better career. Well, to give you an example, while visiting a grocery store in Peoria, I saw a boy grab his mother's arm with one hand. With the other, he pointed at me. I could hear him say, "Mom, it's the snake guy." By doing school programs, I met a lot of kids. I'd see them during their spring or fall tours at the Nature Center. And then again in the wintertime, we went into classrooms. We did what we called in-school programs. For example, I'd assemble a balance of nature mobile for the classroom. Or I'd introduce a couple of live animals, such as snakes, insects, or spiders. Now notice those are 3 things that aren't necessarily favorites. There's a reason to select them. These always generated questions and discussion. I used a large rat snake. Now we have those around here. We call them pine snakes. They're not pine snakes. That's a southeastern snake. They're fox snakes, the ones that live here. But the fox snake has a close relative called the pilot black snake, and they're found around Peoria. So that's what I had in the classroom. You had to use something large so it could be seen across the classroom or in an auditorium or whatever. I used a tarantula the size of my hand. And I tell you, when I picked up that spider at a pet shop, she was already old. I used her for 10 years. I say her. The males aren't anywhere close to that size. And huge You've heard of hissing cockroaches from Madagascar? I had a little colony of them. So I'd bring those along because they fill your hand. They're impressive across a room. How many of you remember a 1990 movie, Arachnophobia? I was doing a program right around that time, and I asked, it was an adult program in an auditorium. I asked them, how many of you saw Arachnophobia? Hands. Whole bunch. I said, you people are in luck. And I turned around to the box I had with me. I happened to have with me one of the stars of the show. And I picked her up, and she was great because when I picked her up, she just sat there. But when I made her vertical, she'd do the legs. And you wouldn't believe the effect that had. Well, I spoke at a soil and water conservation district at banquets from time to time. And I was at one of those banquets, and a spokesman from a seed company had talked about people's irrational fear of chemicals, referring to it as chemophobia. When it came my turn to speak, I told the gathering I happened to have with me the cause of chemophobia. So I picked up the Madagascar hissing cockroach and I said, arthrophobia. I even convinced the previous speaker to pet the critter, if you could imagine. As a naturalist, I was in a unique position to help people see things differently. One of my goals was to help lower their level of anxiety, because a lot of people aren't very familiar with nature anymore. We spend very little time outdoors anymore, most of us. Perhaps it could even help them enjoy their hikes in the woods a little better. And that was a goal. Or encounters in their own yard, despite the presence of spiders, wasps, or snakes. One of my favorite examples. This one is just incredible to me. A lady called the Nature Center. Do you know of any way I can attract hornets to nest in the eaves of my house? So I wondered whether I had heard her correctly, or more likely, if one of my friends was pulling my leg, when she offered, do you think if I spread some honey up there? Hornets have a definite image problem. By the way, I just remembered I forgot my picture of a hornet I was going to show everybody. Way to go. Their spherical gray nest is a no trespassing sign. They could be a poster child for feisty. As insects go, they are intelligent. But the reason that hornets and yellow jackets get to serve as team mascots is not because they're intelligent. It's because they're perceived as dangerous and scary. So why would she want to attract them? She said she had called the Nature Center the previous year asking how to get rid of a hornet nest from her eave. I had given her a couple of ideas and asked whether they'd been a nuisance. No. Had they stung anybody? No. Was the nest located where somebody might accidentally get too close? No. Because it was around back and up on the second floor, it was unlikely to pose any sort of a threat. My advice in that case was to consider a cheap and easy option. Do nothing. Leave it alone and watch for the hornets around the yard. In late fall, they'll be gone, and don't reoccupy the nest. She decided it was remote enough, so she had left it alone. Soon she began noticing the hornets around the yard. In her garden, they protected her vegetables by capturing bugs that were coming after her tomatoes, for example. At her window, she observed them capturing flies, but the one that got me was when she had picnics. Family and friends would come over and sit around a picnic table outside. And you know how picnics invite flies to join them? What happened was her hornets were coming around where the picnic was taking place, and they were grabbing flies on the wing and taking them away. I didn't believe that she was telling the truth right there until I saw it myself. They do that. Their eyes are well suited to motion, not necessarily to focus. This endeared the little predators, which gradually became adopted as her hornets. Neighbors had pointed out the nest and told her how to get rid of them, but these were her hornets. Nobody was getting rid of them. In fall, after nuptial flights, hornets succumb to the cold weather. Fertile queens hibernate in woodland mulch. I had explained to her that what happens is the nest deteriorates. It goes away on its own. Birds pick it apart, finding extra little morsels that are still in there. They'd be gone regardless of whether she paid someone to remove the nest or not. In fact, her hornets had left. Now she simply wanted them back. She had taken the time, and this is the key, as you mentioned with Wendell Berry. She had taken the time to see bald-faced hornets in a different light. About all I could offer in terms of advice was to keep her fingers crossed and hope for a hornet nest. Social wasps can earn their keep by providing a pouncing predatory pest service, but this is only positive as long as they are not nesting near enough where they themselves become the pest. I have some experience with this. As a kid, I was drawn to a large round gray paper balloon of a bald-faced hornet nest suspended in shrubbery in my grandmother's backyard. Slowly, I crept closer and closer to the opening from which numerous hornets were coming and going. I got within about 10 feet and stopped to watch. This was an unfortunate decision. They had posted a guard near the nest entrance to watch for overly curious boys. Suddenly, a spherical black blur came buzzing from the nest, a stinging fastball. It zoomed straight through the strike zone to my chin. My ineffective swing was late. Strike. I was out of there. My chin burning with an excruciating swelling agony, I had a new and very painful appreciation for hornets' unexpected speed, as well as their depth of their concern for their nursery. At least I gained a perfect baseball metaphor. Wasps have a Jekyll and Hyde personality. Unfortunately, most folks know them by their hide side. Many people have had similar experiences to mine. When not defending a nest, however, hornets are very approachable. They can seem awkward, even comical. They're so focused, they hardly know we're around. It's easy to observe them. I've gone up to a hornet and got I had a handheld little lens and a camera, and I'm right in his face, taking pictures. Doesn't care. There's no nest. If they're not defending a nursery, they don't even know what you are. I took out I left my Beastie box at home too. Darn it. Well, I had a fellow on a nature hike one time, and we're just checking out a few things, answering some questions, flowers and so on, and a hornet came and landed right on his glasses. He didn't see it. It's like right here. And I said, okay, please hold still. Don't move. The last thing you want a hornet to do is get behind your glasses. So I took out this little plastic Beastie box that has a built-in magnifier on it, and I opened it up and just reached out and just put the hornet in it, and then passed it around so they could all see it up close. By the way, we call them a bald-faced hornet. Robert Frost called them a white-tailed hornet. They have a cream-colored face and a cream-colored tail. I like his word better. Anyway, he didn't, they all got to see it and that was it. Another animal of concern, a caller had discovered a huge rattlesnake in his lawn. He described it as being enormous. I explained why this would be highly unlikely in central Illinois. The only huge rattlesnake is the eastern, and there aren't very many of them anymore. He then said it was a water moccasin. So I asked the obvious question, you live near water? No. Water moccasins are found near water, well south of St. Louis. The last time I checked, it was 80 miles. So St. Louis is considerably south of Peoria. So I told him I'd like to see the snake, and I'd come right over. When I arrived, there were half a dozen people holding shovels and pitchforks, as I suspected it was a large bull snake, about 7 feet long. I thanked him for calling the Nature Center, and I knelt next to the snake and asked whether they'd had any issues with mice or other rodents around the yard, around the house. No. So I suggested they thank this large predator. Think of it not as a snake. Think of it as a bushel of rodents. And when you take it out of the picture, now that bushel of rodents is surviving and they're there. Guess what they're doing? Making more rodents. Yeah, that's how you can get that's how you can get into a problem. You know, the predator is there for a good reason, and it's there for in our own best interest. Like I say, I touched the snake, which continued to lie still. They could see the critter was harmless. I brought a bag with me to relocate the snake if it bothered them. They decided they preferred to have it around. Since it was a positive part of their home environment, they were seeing it in a different light. A lady called me and she said she'd been in her house for 25 years and she had never seen so many rodents around the home. They were becoming problematic. What's going on? And I said, I haven't gotten any other calls on this issue from anybody. So there's something going on at your house. So I thought I'd try there's a real reach. By any chance, did somebody kill a snake maybe about 6 feet long in black, the black rat snake? She thought for a minute. Yeah, last May. The neighbor, yeah, he killed it. It was up on the hill. I knew the area which she called from. I knew there was habitat for black rat snake. Well, when I explained that to her, oh, you don't do this with impunity. Something else happens, as you allude. Dr. Suzuki's words provide a roadmap for us. A mountain is a deity, not a pile of ore. A river is one of the veins of the land, not potential irrigation water. A forest is a sacred grove, not timber. Other species are biological kin, not resources. Earth is our mother, not an opportunity for personal gain. By the way, I'm sure you've all heard that we share 99% of our DNA and our genome with chimpanzees. Well, I want to offer one for you that'll make you it blows your mind. We share 60% of the DNA in our genome with bananas. Somehow there's a connection. Well, look at the world in a different light. Take the time to learn about it. What's going on? Create healthy habitats. Plant natives. Avoid spray. Provide cover and places to nest. And most of all, enjoy those critters who are, in fact, our kin. Happy trails.
Thank you, Dale. Lots to, it was fun. Thank you very much and very informative. And that story about the porcupine just quills me. But please, please stand if willing and able and join us in the singing of hymn 175, please. He prayeth best who loveth best all things, both great and small. For the dear God who loveth us, he made and loveth all. More words from Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Following the postlude, please join us in the gathering room for coffee and conversation. And after about 15 minutes, you'll hear the chimes, and we'll come back here for a talk back with Dale for maybe 20 or 30 minutes or something like that. We hope you'll be able to join us.